Hello everyone, this is Kat and welcome back to the channel. And today we'll talk a little bit about the Helminth and damage boosting abilities. So there's a whole bunch of information here I'm really quickly going to go over. And there's a bit this, for the people that don't know, in the next update they're going to add a feature where you can sacrifice Warframes that are non-prime to a system, and once you sacrifice it, you will unlock one of their abilities to put onto other frames. They have a list of pre-selected abilities. You only have to sacrifice the frame once to get the benefit forever, but you can only get the abilities they say you can have. So there are a few good, few bad ones, but more importantly, there are 4 really damage-oriented abilities. But note that there is one little limitation here. What about damage buffing abilities? You have 2 abilities increase damage, here they say. Mirage, Eclipse, Rhino's Roar. However, as mentioned, there's going to be 4. Gonna say the other 2 in a second. Creating a special case for this. For these abilities, when infused into Warframe with similar abilities, Chroma, Mirage, Rhino, Octavia, they do not count. Apparently, you are not counting any other frames for this limitation, and you can only have 1 damage buffing ability at a time on these frames. Can we stop the damage on farms that already have them? So this limitation does not apply on the other 30 plus war frames. So, of course, there are a few damage buffing abilities, such as Saren's Toxic Slash, I think it's called, on the top of my head, that gives extra toxin damage. Those are not put into the system because Saren, as you can see here, has her mold that is going to be donatable. But we do have Fold's Shock with the Shock Trooper augment, and we have Grendel here with the Nourish ability, but you can only get Nourish Strike, which is a damage buffing ability. But these 2 are kind of special. They're not strict up damage buffs. And in addition to that, the 2 that are available, Rhino's Roar here, and Mirage's Eclipse, are 2 very different buffs as well. So, to give a little bit of a comparison and what I think you should pick on your Warframe, as a little tip, I've went into the second round and tested out metric fun bunch of stuff. For this I've been using the Velt, as it has pretty low crit and status chance, so I can and also pretty low base damage, so I can do a lot of testing for different mod setups, etc. So I have all the frames that I've mentioned just so now with a very basic mod setup. So this is just 4 power strength increasing mods, because most of these abilities require a higher power strength to get more benefit. I will also be comparing them without any of the mod setups, but so for this one, Rhino, we got the Roar. And without the mods, you get a 50% damage increase. With the mods, you get a 154% increase. So we're going to round it down to 150. So that is 2.5 times damage multiplier, supposedly. I say supposedly because it not always happens that way. Roar affects post mod damage. So while it's a low value, it is after elemental mods and other damage multipliers, which is an important thing to keep in mind, because that means that its buff basically is affected by any damage increasing mod that scales with this ability, basically. So what would originally be a 90% extra heat would effectively become 2.5 times that. So that would be 215, 225, something like that. That's the effect that Rhino has on these kind of weapons. And to give you a quick example here, I'm gonna grab ourselves some energy. Here are our enemies. And for the base damage, this is going to be the same for all guns. It's going to be 184 on single shots, non-crit. And I got 2 corrosive procs there, so I can no longer use this guy for testing because it has lower armor. On this one again, it will go back to 184. Now, we're gonna be using this roar. And you can see I have 468, which is roughly the 2.5 times multiplier. So that all works pretty fine and handy. Rhino is a pretty straightforward buff, but it requires you to have a higher power strength. And this one is applicable again only to frames that don't already have power strength buff, so I'm going to compare those first. And then we have Mirage. Mirage, without the mods, so I'm going to remove these 4 mods, has a 75% damage reduction on when in the shades, and a damage increase of 200% when in the sun. So note that this ability is not always a damage increase ability. That's something for really to remember. It's not a consistent ability. You have to pay attention to where you walk. But it is much higher than Rhino's buff, 616% when maxed out like this. But it works like a serration, and there are some limitations there. So serration, right here, you can see all stats go down if you put on a serration. However, because it works like a serration, it scales not as well with extra heavy caliber and serration mods, because this would be 135 and 165 would lead to 300% damage increase, and this will become 900%. So instead of a 6 times damage multiplier, it would only be a quote-unquote merely 3 times damage multiplier. From going from 300% to 900% is of course 3 times as much. So there's that. But if you had these mods not equipped, it would be a 6 times damage multiplier. Then again, you would need a lot of elemental mods to make fully use of that. So keep that in mind, that if you're gonna run the Mirage's damage buff, try to shy away from heavy caliber because it has less of an effect. So again, this should be a roughly 3 times damage multiplier, so it should be higher than the Rhinos. But again, this is all theoretical testing. Sometimes the damage numbers don't quite add up. Oh, this one has had the corrosive stat on it. But 1300. That's actually higher than what I just mentioned. So, yeah. Sometimes things don't quite add up. Mirage is definitely a very powerful frame, but it's somewhat inconsistent. It's not always this level of buff. But in theory, what I just mentioned, that's how it should math. But yeah, I can't actually all write it down and calculate it out for you guys. But anyways, now we go on to Grendel. Here's my pink fairy, by the way. And Grendel has a very interesting way of doing the buff. It gives you a damage multiplier of specifically toxin damage. And I'm gonna have to get this one. And it gives you an up to 2.54, so 1.5 to 254 times multiplier on that effect. However, it is only a 1 elemental mod, so effectively you would be adding the damage, and it's only purely toxin. And that's pretty important, because if you, for example, only have electricity on here, so I have blast, and let's put on high voltage and rem rounds, so get some more status gens here. Turn around as well. Actually, I don't have mod capacity for that. There we go. So now I have 61% mod status gens. And you can see here, I do blast, I do electricity. And that's it. However, if I go and feed onto one of these guys, and get my Neuro Strike out just in time, you're going to be able to see that I am capable of doing corrosive procs, because my electricity just got turned into corrosive. If you already have corrosive on your build, it will simply be increased damage. However, the damage increase is not as good as with other weapons. So, Hellfire, Stormbringer goes there. Heavy Cal, and we're going back to Hellfire. So now I have corrosive, and I have blast on here, just like before. To test this, double check this really. Yeah, I'm gonna shoot once. 184. And I'm going to eat more dudes. I'm gonna run out of energy before being able to do that. So I'm gonna have to come back. There we go. North Strike. Active. And it is 310. So that is only that 2.5 times multiplier. It's less effective than Rhino for sure, but it can be very useful. But again, it does require a full power strength build. And then we have our Volt. Our Volt only needs this one Shock Trooper. So there's much less ability usage going on here. You only need this Augment. However, of course, the Augment does not benefit any other build. So this mod would only be thrown onto Warframes that are not going into power strength abilities. Like, if you already have a power build, then pick Grendel if you're Rhino or Mirage or COPPA. If you want extra damage, pick Grendel, not Volt, because Volt will require you to sacrifice one of your mod slots. Well, Grendel will not. And this Shock Trooper augment is quite simple. Hold to cast will grant all allies within 50 meters, including yourself, an additional 100% electricity damage for their attacks for 40 seconds. This does not scale with any ability stuff. So this is ideally used on any frame that is not reliant on duration, efficiency, range, or strength, or only really efficiency. Or that doesn't really care about whatever stats it has, it just wants to have a damage buff. And one such example, I guess, would be Mesa. Mesa has very long duration efficiency, doesn't really need much strength because the regular pistols are quite powerful. But in a case, you can use the Shock Trooper quite effectively because you wouldn't have the full power strength build that you would have on other frames. And for Saren, you would kind of have the same as well in comparison. So Shock Trooper is a really simple mod. You activate it, and now you have extra electricity. You can see it's the weakest out of all of them. However, again, it can be used to make corrosive using only toxin mods, so it can save you a mod slot on your weapon. And again, you don't need power strength on your build. And 100% electricity damage bonus on all allies as well. Again, remember that. It's pretty powerful if you don't have like any of the stronger effects. Lastly, there is Valkyr, of course, with the attack speed buff. However, I don't have her, and I can't really compare her properly to the other frames because these are all damage buffs. So yeah, if you want absolute the most powerful damage buff, you're gonna take a Mirage with Eclipse with the power strength on there. But it's gonna be inconsistent. If you want consistency, take a Rhino Roar. Again, you're gonna need power strength for that. If you are a Rhino, Mirage, Chroma, or Octavia, that relies on power strength, wants extra damage, take Grendel's Neuro Strike. And on anything else, really, that needs extra damage, you're going to be able to pick Volt. And it's just going to cost you one mod to get that equipped. That's pretty straightforward. I'm not really going to cover any of the other ability types, such as support, card control, whatever. This is just a little bit of me fiddling around with the damage numbers. They don't fully add up. I think my math is wrong somewhere, or I have some piece of information wrong. But yeah. Although, of course, there have been a lot of guides on Mirage and Rhino on how to build those weapons. Just keep in mind that while Mirage is in theory stronger, it's less consistent and doesn't always work and stuff like on the Eidolon Hunt and etc. That's really all I got, and I'm starting to rumble about, so I'm just gonna end the recording. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. See ya!